When constructing a civil cell, some issues we'll run into are in orientation. A common problem in orientation, there are actually two common problems with orientation of a cell. The first problem involves quadrants. In some instances, a curve return placed between reference elements. We can see in this cell we have a white reference element representing an edge of pavement and another reference element representing perhaps geometry for ramp takeoff. And at issue is placing an intersecting point or a fillet between these two pieces of geometry. Because will always be unknown as to what direction the reference elements in the actual design, in other words, the edge of pavement and the ramp geometry in the design will take on, we will find that without addressing this issue, our cells, should we place an offset in between these two elements, our arc in this case would perhaps rotate back to the wrong quadrant. And this is because the way the reference elements are constructed. So in our cell, I've constructed the reference elements to left to right on both instances. However, in our design, we may have an edge of pavement traveling left to right, but ramp geometry right to left. This would introduce a complexity that the cells simply cannot figure out. So in order to understand or take care of the quadrants, we need to replicate an element where we can control the direction with which it has been created. So in our cell, in this instance, I've offset using the single offset partial command. I've offset the line from a starting point, a known intersection point, in one direction. I've then offset the second line, again, from a starting point in one direction. This will help me in several ways in the cell. The first is when I now place the intersection arc or the fillet arc, I want to be sure to grab my offset element, not the actual reference. So you see I use the right click to get that. Now it looks the same in my cell, but in the design, this will position itself correctly regardless of the orientation of the design edge of pavement and design ramp geometry. The other thing it does is it allows for subsequent placement of elements along these referenced elements. Because they're oriented correctly, the cell will be able to determine the orientation not based on the references, but based on these two elements.